Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Everyone, glad to be here with GBF again. It's nice to be back. And I have to get a new bio for GBF. I'm happily retired from CIIS, although I teach an occasional class, but I am an emeritus professor, which means I get to stay home a lot, which is something you are now all emeritus people because you all get to stay home a lot. But I want to start out today with a little poem that's been circulating around. Some of you may have seen it, but it's by Kitty O'Mara, and it's called "The People Healed and Then the Earth Healed." And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised. They made art and played games and learned new ways of being. And they were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed, the people joined together again. They grieved their losses. They made new choices. They dreamed new images. They created new ways to live and to heal the earth as they had been healed. So I think poetry and art and other stuff is really important for us as we're dealing with situations in our life right now. So for me, one of my favorite teachings, and one that I use often in teaching and may have used here, but I'll just mention it briefly, is Drista Dharma Sukha Varain. And that's a Sanskrit phrase from the ancient sutras, and it basically gets translated as dwelling happily in the present moment. It's one of Thich Nhat Hanh's most frequently repeated teachings, and he describes it as dwelling happily in things as they are. And he says that it is indeed the most important of the Buddhist teachings for us. So for me, like much of what Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, I'm drawn to it because it's simple. And in many cases, difficult to implement, but the teaching is that we just do the next right thing. We keep trying to do what this teaching tells us. So when I first thought about this teaching this week, I thought, well, surely when it was written in ancient times, they didn't understand about how much we're suffering with shelter at home and blah, blah, blah. And I thought even Thich Nhat Hanh, when he told us, couldn't possibly have imagined the pandemic situation that we're all living in. And then after taking a couple of deep breaths and meditating, I felt really silly because I thought about the life Thich Nhat Hanh has had, being driven from his country for his spiritual beliefs and having a life in exile for many, many decades, and now, in fact, being quite ill and preparing for parinirvana himself. So what I want to do is just think about the ways that my practice has informed how I'm living, share those with you, and see if any of them resonate with you when we get to a discussion period in a while. So what I want to do is not give one of those perky talks that some people give and that I've been accused of, in which I say if we simply meditate, everything will be just fine. If we remember our Buddhist practice, everything will be just fine. Buddhist practice is not about denying suffering in us or in our world, in the ways that we're living. Rather, it involves the realization that suffering is always present and that happiness can also always be present. We're taught to remember and practice both the 10,000 sorrows and the 10,000 joys. So in the book of Thich Nhat Hanh's that I was looking at to prepare for this talk, called Transformation at the Base, he says that the elements of suffering do not supersede the elements of happiness. It's a choice that we make. If we touch only suffering, then we're not really fully living. Some people, he says, feel like they're imprisoned in their suffering, and that there's a wall around them, is the way he put it, that prevents them from being in contact with the beauty of a flower, the sunset, or a walk in nature. Well, I thought, feeling quite sorry for myself, he didn't understand that there is a wall. I'm trapped in my house and will be for, weeks and months to come, who knows. And particularly as a senior citizen who had some open heart surgery this year, I got a kindly note from one of my neighbors saying, basically adopting me, and that the neighbors in the building were going to take care of me because I clearly was so frail and whatever. So I thought, oh, how sad my life is. And then I was standing in my window looking out at Stern Grove behind my house, and just past that, knowing Ocean Beach was right there, both in walking distance. And I suddenly thought, life is really not so terrible. And then I thought about my vacation plans, which I spend every July in Ireland, and looks like that probably won't happen this year. So I was really, quite saddened about all of that and feeling quite sorry for myself. And some of you may have experienced some of that this week or the last couple of weeks. And then I was reminded of what the author Mary Akers said, which is that we travel to search and we come home to find ourselves. And it seems to me that that's really the essence of Buddhist practice, is this whole endeavor to find ourselves, to find our true nature. So in Thich Nhat Hanh's book, he says that we have this choice to recognize and accept suffering, and to know that, we do live in a shelter in place environment, and we do live in a place with a virus that nobody knows much about, frankly. The information changes moment to moment, and that most of us aren't really comfortable with that level of uncertainty. So what Thich Nhat Hanh advises us in that book is if people would touch the healthy and beautiful things that lie within and around us, then our suffering would decrease. So basically saying not to deny any of the confusion or the worry or the sadness, but simply to actively and intentionally bring up those things that are beautiful in our lives, those things that work for us, and the things that bring us joy. So there are lots of online art forums at this point. Joe Good, who's a member of this group, has put some wonderful stuff online. Other dance companies have as well. So there's an opportunity to do that. And as long as we stay 6 feet away from each other, there are also opportunities to walk in Stern Grove or walk on Ocean Beach, and even to do it together from 6 or 7 feet apart. So there are many things that we can be doing. And the thing that I needed to practice this week was to really not just stay locked in my home and have CNN as my best friend, and to watch the true and untrue things that were data points that were changing moment to moment and hour to hour. So to do this, we need Sangha. We need a group of friends. We need folks who will smile with us, share with us, hold with us, understand what we're going through because they're going through something similar. And they will take steps with us along the Buddhist path to find that internal strength and that internal freedom, to find that joy that we can also be in touch with. So I would like to spend our time today really thinking about the realities of this world we're living in, and then how we as Buddhists, as gay Buddhists, and as fellows can live with both the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sufferings. So I believe that as Buddhists, that we do have some things that can help us, and that significantly that those things, in fact, can help others, our friends, our family, our partners, whether they practice Buddhism or not, and out into the greater community. If we reduce chaos and worry and panic in the community, then the entire community will be better for it. So what I've been trying to do myself, and I'm going to hopefully share with you today, is I've been trying to go through the small treasures that I've found, the gems of Buddhism that I've learned and practiced over my 29 years as a Buddhist, so that in times when life seems really large and overwhelming, I can return to these gems and think of the actual practical pieces of my Buddhist experience that can help me and help you and help us together. So, as I mentioned, I don't think it's possible or even useful to diminish or dismiss COVID-19 or the fact that we're sheltered in home. Just washing it away is not what the Buddhist path teaches us. When I finish my meditation, I look out the window and I see West Portal Avenue fairly quiet and closed down, all the stores and restaurants closed. I could easily, after meditating, go right back to that sort of worry. The fact is that it's not just about meditation. It's about following the Buddha's path. And so I want to take responsibility for touching the good things in my life and the skillful practices. And I want to encourage each of you to think of the ones in your life. You can borrow mine or have mine. They're not mine. They're 2,500 years old. So I want you to use them but I want you to also pick some of your own. Make a list or create a basket with the gifts of Buddhism and your practice in it. And turn to that list, to go into that basket and pick things out that can help you when times get tough, when anxiety arises, when panic peers into your room. All of these things are real. We can't diminish them or dismiss them, but we can engage actively. And so I encourage us not to think of it as something we do just in those moments of emotion, like somebody who might decide to eat some chocolate because they need to be soothed or satisfied. And pretty soon they find that they need a lot of soothing, and so they're eating too much chocolate. And pretty soon the chocolate has made them sick or unhealthy. So that's what we call spiritual bypass, is going to something that we think will alleviate what's going on for us emotionally and spiritually. So we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to think about the treasures and the gifts. And so I'll just share with you a few of mine, and then we can each talk about what some of ours were. First one is the refuges. At the very beginning of our Buddhist practice, we learn the refuges. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And this group, the GBF, was created and sustained so that we would have a place to feel safe. So with the things that are unique about our lives as gay men and our friends, that we would have a place where we could come and we could share and we could meditate and we could practice and we could walk the Buddhist path without thinking we had to do it by anybody else's definition and without feeling like we might be some diversity project for a larger Sangha or meditation center. And so after all these years of practicing in solidarity and in fellowship here, we now operate from a place of Buddhist strength and a clear understanding and a clear knowledge of who and what we have to offer. So we can now partner with other Sanghas, and many of us actually belong to and practice with other Sanghas. And we do that from a place of refuge that we have here at GBF. So coming home and being safe, allowing ourselves with our fears and frustrations to be held gently and compassionately by each other, that's really what refuge is. So it would be uncertainty breeds fear, and it would be crazy for us not to think about the fear and uncertainty that we're experiencing right now. But that's in fellowship when we take refuge in the Buddha, when we take refuge in the Dharma, things exactly as they are, and we take refuge in the Sangha, we have this opportunity to take care of ourselves and each other. So I want to read you a few lines from another poem, this one by Kristen Flint. It's called An Imagined Letter from COVID-19 to Human Beings. And I won't read all of it. And this and the other two poems that I'm going to talk about, we can make available to everybody. And you can probably find them online. But I want to read you a few lines of what Kristen says. And this is a letter from COVID-19 to humans. Stop. Just stop. This is no longer a request. It is a mandate. We will help you. You have not been listening. Of course, it's hard to listen when you are so busy all the time, hustling to uphold the comforts and convenience that scaffold your lives. But the foundation is giving way, buckling under the weight of your needs and desires. We will help you. We will bring firestorms to your body. We will bring fever to your body. We will bring a flooding to your body that you might hear, we are not well. Despite what you might think or feel, we are not the enemy. We are a messenger. We are an ally. We are a balancing force. We are asking you to stop, to be still, and to really listen. Many are afraid now. Do not demonize your fear, but also do not let it rule you. Instead, let it speak to you. In your stillness, listen to its wisdom. What might it be telling you about what is at work, at issue? What is at risk, beyond the threat of personal illness or inconvenience? So in that poem, I think what we're really hearing is that really, it's natural to be fearful right now. It's natural to be confused. It's natural not to understand, but we don't have to do that alone. And in fact, as Buddhists living in Sangha and fellowship, we should not do it alone. We should be talking to each other and easing each other's worries and sharing each other's concerns. And that's a basic teaching of the first three precepts of Buddhist practice is those. The second teaching that I want to share with you that I've been relying on is the final teaching of the Buddha. And that teaching is, he said that as he was preparing to die, preparing for parinirvana, his teaching says, if you seek to be tranquil and quiet, liberated from insistence on your passions, at ease and content, then you should part company with confusion and bustle and dwell at your ease in some solitary place. So in this teaching, the Buddha is talking about taking the right action, doing the meditation. And I would increase that to say for me and maybe for you, to limit the amount of news that I watch because it is frustrating and concerning. CNN is not my best friend. Our Sangha are my friends. And that it's an action that I get to take. You should part company with confusion and bustle. And so that is something specific that I can do in terms of my practice to concentrate on other things. Not to be on a news blackout because we all want to know the basic update. But what I've discovered, and maybe you have, is that if I watch news for a half an hour a day, I get all the update. And then I get it over and over and over again from doctors and commentators and the leaders of the government. And it's just, it's not healthy for me. So how do we practice with all that going on? Norman Fisher, who's a Buddhist teacher, says this, that bodhisattvas, let that siren go by. Bodhisattvas just keep going. Bodhisattva, as for those who are not in Zen practice, simply means all of us who are practicing. So bodhisattvas just keep going. Our effort isn't wooden or mechanical. It has to be effervescent. Bodhisattvas love to do spiritual practice in all of its varieties. We simply could not do otherwise. And when we face obstacles, and of course there are obstacles, our practice is to overcome them, not by oppositional force, but with patience and kindness and love. It is love, not power, that propels us to our practice. So for me, that really talks about remembering that intentionality is important in my practice. That every morning I try to set an intention for the day. It's part of my work as a Buddhist and my life as a person in recovery. And my reflections every day are that I want to walk the Buddhist path. And that for me, I'm really drawn to these Buddhist teachings that this is a path of compassion and a path of kindness. When the Dalai Lama is asked what is his religion, he smiles and says, my religion is kindness. And so I simply ask every day myself in the morning when I get up, what is the level of my fear and overwhelm today? Did I jump right up and turn on CNN or grab my iPad for the latest update? Is that helping me in some way? Is that informing me in some way? Or is that simply adding to the chaos in my life? And so then I say, in the fear and understand and concern on one hand, what have I done today to be kind and compassionate to somebody else? Or what will I do? How will I get out of my own head and into the practice of compassion and kindness? For me, that comes down to some of the simple things that the Buddha has taught. For me, it comes down to, for instance, I have an 86-year-old neighbor in the building. Have I checked in with her to see how she's doing and if she needs anything, including just somebody to talk to? Very practical, something I can do. Instead of CNN, pay attention to her. So those teachings that I'm referring to there go into the next three precepts. And the next three precepts are called the pure precepts. And they basically say to do good, to avoid evil, and to live for the benefit of all beings. And Norman Fisher, the teacher, says, he rephrases them as, I vow to refrain from all actions that increase suffering. I vow to perform all actions that increase awareness. And I vow to live for and with all beings. And so in that second one, he says that this is really the intention to actually do what occurs to us. So we are all on this call kind and compassionate people. And we are all on this call folks that really want to do the right thing. And when we wake up in the morning in this age of shelter in place and in this age of beauty and Buddhist practice. We get to actually decide what we're going to do and then actually do it. So Ajahn Brahm says kindfulness is what we should practice. Kindfulness is the cause of relaxation. It brings ease to the body, to the mind, and ultimately to the world. Kindfulness allows healing to happen. Don't just be mindful, be kindful. So those are the first two. The third one that I just want to invite you to think about that we all practice and know about is shamatha. And this is what is translated as calm abiding, or calm presence or quietude. And in the original teachings, it has to do with preparing our minds and our bodies for meditation. But in all of those teachings and the more modern teachings, it also has to do with how we lead our lives, how we develop the metacognition to know when our minds and our bodies are being distracted. And certainly CNN for me is a major distraction at this point. And my neighbor who needs someone to talk to and someone to check in on her is an alternative to that. So this calm abiding allows me to say, I know what causes me concern and confusion, and I know what causes me and others peace and tranquility, and that my job as a Buddhist, my opportunity, my gift as a Buddhist is to cultivate calm abiding. To be really clear, there's nothing wrong with watching the news. There's nothing wrong with being as well informed as possible, as long as that's serving to make you more calm and serving to put you in a better place for living with yourself and living in benefit to others. And so one of the things that this brings to mind is the whole idea of right speech. And in the teachings on right speech, the Buddha taught us that this is very important, that we have right view, we mean to do well, we have right intention and right action, we're going to do well, and then we move into right speech. And what's been called for in right speech is that we only say that of which we are certain. And so as a friend of mine said to me the other day, if I was actually practicing right speech when it comes to the virus, I wouldn't speak at all, because the news changes moment to moment. I hear certain things that I grab onto. I dismiss other things because of who said them, and it's a constant swirl. And so Thich Nhat Hanh says in one of his teachings, before we speak, say, is it true? Is it useful? Is it timely? Is it helpful? And finally, does it need to be said by me? And so if by speaking with friends and others about the virus and the shelter-in-place situation, I'm simply adding to the whirlwind and adding to the confusion, then maybe it's better for me to not talk about it at all, other than to acknowledge that it exists and that it's definitely impacting us. And so the other part of that, Roshi Joan Halifax talks about, as important as right speech is deep listening or right listening. And she describes that as listening from the heart or generous listening. And so one of the ways that we practice that is to consider why a person is speaking. So someone may be speaking because they need to share a fact with you, or they want you to debunk that fact. They may be speaking because they're nervous. They may be speaking because they're living with a lot of anger and confusion and fear with the government or whoever. They may be speaking, as many people do frequently, from a need to be liked. And in our community, often people are speaking because their entire lives they've been made to be silent and invisible. And so now this is a chance to reduce isolation. And so the generous heart says to us that we have this opportunity to really engage in right speech and deep listening as this opportunity to really live the teaching of the Buddha, which is about calm abiding. So we're not going to add to the chaos, and we're not going to do any of that. There's a wonderful book by Paula Arai called Bringing Zen Home, and she describes what she thinks of as domestic Zen. And her quote is, unlike its monastic counterpart, which thrives on control, discipline, and impeccable cleanliness, domestic Zen is at home with the chaotic, emotional, and messy lives of people struggling with their families, their health, their jobs, and their lives. And so I think calm abiding is a different thing right now, in the sense that, we aren't living in times that would, by definition, seem to be particularly calm. But it seems to me, as Buddhists and as gay men who have lived through other viruses, we have something to offer. So I want to read another poem that we can make available. I'll read it quickly. It's called Pandemic. It's by Lynn Unger. And she says, what if we thought, it's titled Pandemic, what if we thought of it as Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it actually is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when the body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You hardly can deny it now. Know that our lives are indeed in each other's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, as long as we all shall live. So I think what these teachings of the Buddha that I have been working with really say to me is there are things we can do very practically that I believe all of us have the intention to do. And then our opportunity at this point is to do those things actively, to do them. And so I want to share just one more practice that I've been really taking refuge in and relishing in this week. And that is that Buddhism is a wisdom practice. And I think we in GBF and others in our communities, we know some things, and we know some things in our wisdom that we can share. So as I said, we don't know a lot about COVID-19 or the virus, but in our community, especially in our community, we know a lot about our immune systems. We've been paying attention to them for decades now. And one thing we know for sure is that stress and anxiety have a negative and depleting impact on our immune system. So stress occurs when there are things in life that surpass a person's ability to cope with them. Then stress happens. And stress is the reaction in our body, and our body releases stress hormones to take care of that stress within our body. And at a moment-to-moment basis, that's okay. Those hormones can be helpful. But if we live at increased stress over long periods of time or very deeply, then those stress hormones have a negative effect and reduce our body's immune system, which in fact reduces our body's response to foreign invaders. So it's not just that calm abiding is a useful Buddhist practice from a spiritual standpoint, but we know in our community the importance of keeping our immune system strong, getting plenty of sleep, eating right, getting exercise, and doing whatever we can to live in calm abiding. These aren't just spiritual principles at this point. These are actually life-saving principles. Worry and stress, it's been proven in studies, make us much more likely to succumb to a virus, and much more likely to be significantly impacted by a virus that we do pick up. So I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I spoke with a member of our community this week, and we will call him Claude for sake of discussion. And he called me because he was bereft with anger and concern because somebody he knows who lives in his building has been coughing and sneezing and feeling badly, and they refuse to stay locked in their apartment. They keep coming into the lobby area. This neighbor is 76 years old, and Claude has from time to time shopped for this person, taken this person for walks around the neighborhood, and looked in on them. But now Claude says he's furious with this neighbor, and they've had 3 arguments as the only communication they've had in the last week. Claude has stopped any contact with this person at this point and has warned other people in the building to stay away from the elderly neighbor because he fears the person has COVID-19. Claude has said that the 3 arguments are about his insistence that the person go out and get tested. So here's the thing. Claude is dealing with his emotions. He's feeling confusion. He's feeling anger. He's feeling lots of emotions. So Claude and I had some discussion. His name is not Claude, of course, but he is a member of the gay community, and he is a Buddhist. So here's the thing. The 76-year-old neighbor has no access to health care, has no car, can't ride Muni because of his health conditions. So unknown to Claude, because he didn't bother to ask, the person has in fact been with his primary care doctor. And the primary care doctor said, given the situation, that there was no need to come out and to get a test. And here's the reasons why, based on the science of it all. If the person were to manage to come in contact with a test, not an easy thing to do, and tested negative, the doctor's instructions to this person would be shelter in place. Stay in your house. You're in a risk group that requires that you stay home and be as careful as possible. Primary doctor also wisely told him that if he tested positive, his instructions to him would be to go home and shelter in place, to quarantine, just exactly what he's been doing this week. There is no treatment at this time. So if you find out that you're negative or find out you're positive, the result is exactly the same. Go home. So I'm not suggesting that I'm anti-testing or anti-science, and that's a different discussion for a different day. I'm just trying to think about what Claude knows about this person's condition and situation, and what he didn't stop to ask, and the fact that he has, in spite of practicing a compassionate and kindness practice, his own fear has allowed him to distance himself and to distance others from this elderly, frail senior who really needs connection at this point. So with all of this strum and drang that we're listening to on the news and making us nervous and those sort of things, the fact of the matter is that being that worried and having arguments with people and insisting that people do what we think they should do about testing or about care is really not going to do much about COVID. What it's going to do in the case of this elderly neighbor is make him more isolated, make him more stressed out, make him more panicky, and that will in fact further deplete the elder's immune system. So as I say, calm abiding at this point and right speech at this point are things that will help us each individually to be healthier. Actively engaging in calm abiding will in fact change the quality of our health and our lives. So right speech, the same thing. And so if we do that, I think that we help ourselves, we help those we love, we help those who are near us, and ultimately we help even those with whom we are currently angry or who we don't like. So I've been looking on Facebook and I've been seeing this wonderful background that people have put up, which says, you'll excuse my language, it says, "This is serious, stay the F home." Some of you have probably seen that. Well, I would like to add a second one to that that says, "This is serious, calm the F down." Just calm down. Peaceful abiding will save our lives. So I think this is where Buddhists and gay Buddhists, we can really support the health of our community. We know as Buddhists how to live with calm abiding. We know as gay men how to take care of our immune system, and that anxiety and stress, undue anxiety and stress, untreated anxiety and depression negatively impact our immune system. And we know what we can do about that is to take refuge in the Buddha, to take refuge in the Dharma, and to take refuge in each other, to hold each other and to be held by each other. Remembering, so denying and pretending that it's not happening isn't useful. We hold both the sorrows and the suffering and the possibilities. So remember in that poem that I read earlier, Kristen said, "Many are afraid now. Do not demonize your fear, but also do not let it rule you." And thinking of Claude, I shared with him something by Rabbi Harold Kushner, who said, "Do things for people not because of who they are or what they do. Do things for people because of who you are." And so that seems really important to me. And I think as we're thinking of ourselves as this fellowship today, and as we spend some time here together talking, and then spend some time with each other electronically or 6 feet apart as we take walks together and visit with each other. Togetherness is really an important concept, the concept of Sangha. It's a wonderful place to be. We can be warm and secure and kind and loving. We share these gifts that the Buddha insists on and taught us, and the gifts of kindness and humanity and compassion. Togetherness can take us by the hand and remind us that people are here for us and that we're here for others. And while we can't take anyone by hand right now, kindness and compassion can. So the gift for us is to stay together. We can be just as tough as we need to be and be fragile. We can be alone, and yet we can be actively connected with each other. We can face the future and remember our practice that we've been taught in the past and currently. We can remember to take vows each morning, to set our intention for the day, to be healthy and to do what we can to increase our health and the health of others, to use right speech and kind speech, to use deep listening, and whenever we can, to reduce the suffering of others by helping them to experience their suffering and their confusion and fear, and then to have it not be the rule, the organizing principle of their life. Because Andrew Islander says, because that's what kindness is. It's not doing something for someone else because they can't. It's doing something for someone else because you can. So I would just say that in conclusion that, these are the things that I've been practicing with the refuges, the idea of calm abiding, the importance of right speech, and the power of Sangha. And so those are 4 teachings of the Buddha that I have on my list, that I visit every morning, that I visit every time I turn on, and shortly thereafter turn off CNN. That just to be transparent, I turn to that list every time I see the president on television. And I try to make a point to also look at Tony Fauci, the one person in government who I do trust, who most recently has been seen doing this as he's listening. And that's sort of what I'm doing as well. But we have these tools, and I turn to the tools intentionally and specifically. It's what we call right action. They don't just pop up naturally. Fear and concern can pop up naturally. So these are some of the elements that I practice with, and that I'm using as I shelter in place. And I invite you to use them as well. Or, as I mentioned, to really go back to your own Buddhist practice, the things that most speak to you. It might be a chanting practice. It might be increased time on the zafu, increased time meditating. It might be finding your good Buddhist friend, what we call Kalyanamitta, that person who really understands exactly the pain you're in, exactly the concerns you have, exactly the confusion you have, and allows you to have that, and allows you to move through that and moves through it with you. Kalyanamitta, the Buddha told us, is the person who lights the path, the Buddha's path for us. Sometimes we each have a torch to light the path. Sometimes we need the light of the other person. And so make a list of your own. Use those 4 that I've mentioned. Use others. Perhaps in our emails and our sharings with each other, we can share what some of those are so that the list is even longer. But I really encourage you to visit them, to accept them as opportunities for calm amongst the suffering, for beauty amongst the suffering, and most importantly, to use them in partnership with other members of this fellowship, of the gay community and of the Buddhist world. We have an opportunity that's really important, and we don't live in a dualistic world. There's not suffering or peace. There's both of those things at all times. And so if we intentionally and skillfully and compassionately work with each other, I think that we will get through this. And we will not get through it by denying it. We will get through it by actively engaging with one another in good, solid spiritual practice. So thank you.
Stephen, we have about 15 minutes. Do you want to take some questions?
Sure. Yeah.
If you want to ask Stephen a question, raise your hand and unmute your mic. Don?
Stephen, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to hear your voice, and it's a pleasure to be back in communion with this group again. You've expressed such great wisdom, and I feel a great deal calmer after listening to you and understanding what you're saying. And I'm hopeful that perhaps this group can meet this way more than once a week, maybe on a midweek night or something like that. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, that's up for the group to decide. It does probably make sense at this point to stay connected as however we can.
It's something we're hoping to do, actually. Meet more than once. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Clint.
Two things, Steve. It's great to see you. I'm glad you're healthy after your issues. Steve was a lifesaver for me at the retreat a few years ago. I had two questions. Unfortunately, I don't mean to be piggish, but one, I'm wondering how Claude found out that information in the midst of his fear and anger and everything, how he was able to get that information, which I'm sure was helpful. And the other one, could you repeat the name of the author and the first poem, Pat something? And tell us, did she write this specifically now, or was this written in the past?
So to answer that first, the first poem was the one People Had Healed, and the author's name is Kitty O'Meara, Omeara. It's posted, and she actually wrote it for a previous viral outbreak. I'm not sure exactly which one. It was not written in the past couple weeks. The other poem by Unger was, according to the web, written this past week. But I think the situation was that Claude was responding, to, as I talked to him more and more, what he was responding to was his anger with the president and with the government and with what he felt like, for those of us in the gay community, we know we lived through a time when there was a virus and it was killing hundreds of thousands of folks, and the government wouldn't even speak the word. So I have, and Claude had, and others may have, a natural reaction to be angry. Like, here we go again. These people are, it's the same thing. And so Claude his responses were coming from that, sort of still hot ember that was living within him. And so the testing thing just made sense to him. If there's, as in the early days of HIV testing, if there's a test, get the damn thing out so people will know and people can make choices about their health. And so he was extremely angry about operating from that place of anger. He was, of course, also afraid that this neighbor was stepping out into the world, at least as far as the lobby of the building, just to get out of the trappedness of his own apartment. And so Claude was afraid that virus, the person could be shedding virus if in fact he had it. Tony Fauci, who has for years been a friend of our community, the wisest voice in government, I think, has said, frankly, the testing, we do need more testing. It should be available. But frankly, everyone should be operating right now as if they have the virus. Because if you've been out to the grocery store, if you've been in the back of a cab, if you've been on Muni, the chances are you may have come in contact with it. And for some number of hours, you may in fact be shedding virus that you've picked up, whether you're sick or not. You're carrying it around with you. So if everyone behaved as if they had it, and everyone was ultimately careful as you can be, I think that would be an important point. So what I was able to do with Claude was really to help him think about why he was feeling what he was feeling and how he could go so quickly from expressing, he didn't change as a person, but from expressing kindness and compassion that he's been exhibiting to that elderly neighbor for years, and how so quickly he could move to otherize that person and isolate that person and increase that person's concerns. And it really was, we were able to just, both of us, talk about our own experience with the previous viruses and our sense that to assume that the tests are being withheld and the government's not doing what it should. And, that's almost, there's a certain, you sprout some of that, you shoot some of that into the air, and there's a certain relief of getting rid of some of those anger hormones. And so that's what he was doing. And I'm happy to report that this morning he went out grocery shopping and did in fact pick up some groceries for that person. He assured me he was leaving them outside the door and would not be allowing the door to be opened. But he's coming back. He's coming back to kindness and compassion. Thanks.
Sid has his hands up. His hand.
Okay. This question is for you, Jeff. You said that the GBF is planning some events or interactions other than on Sunday morning. This is the first I heard of that. Can you go into that into a little greater detail about what people are thinking of, what plans are making about?
That question's for you, Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Okay. You said something, Jeff, about how GBF is planning a connection other than Sunday mornings with other Sangha members. Can you elaborate on that, please?
We're hoping to. One of the things I've discovered in studying Zoom is I thought about a lot of possibilities. And we could do a lot of people have been asking, for example, in the survey for more social activities. And we could do things from more meetings like this to having, all kinds of events using Zoom. Like we've had a talent show before on retreat. We could have a Buddha bar and cafe, open mic night or something like that. So it's just, all this is new and we're figuring it out as we go along. But I'm glad to hear other people are interested in that, and we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, and I hope this doesn't sound too frivolous, but maybe just a game night with Sangha.
Yeah, right. Yeah, please send me all your ideas.
Yeah, I was just playing game night with some friends with Pictionary, and it does work. I mean, it's not as fun as getting together in person, but I mean, there are ways you can socialize with groups of people, that we weren't using before, most of us.
Yeah.
I participated last night in the Zoom potluck dinner. It's a group of people who are
virtual eating, huh?
Yeah, people all committed to really healthy eating, a certain kind of healthy eating, and people came to the Zoom with the dish they had prepared, the healthy meal they had prepared, and it was a group of queens, so that everybody had the recipe, of course, and they were quite fabulous recipes for healthy food that's available and that will prevent us from eating too much of stuff that's not good. But people had a great time talking about their recipes and what they were eating and really just chatting is what it was. But
yeah, that sounds like fun, stuff like that. Okay, that's my question for what it's worth.
I just wanted to add one thing, and that is we have such a talented group in our Sangha that I'd like to see some people maybe step forward and offer to host, or teach something that they know, maybe just a skill or something like that.
Yeah, well,
one practical thing.
I'll just say this and shut up. I'm saying the obvious here, but and this is also a great medium for if we need help. If one of us is incapacitated, to put out the word that we need somebody to pick up groceries or medicine or something like that. Yeah, so I know we already know that, but I'm just putting it out there again. Yeah,
I was going to make this announcement later, but I'll just do it now since you brought it up. Michael Altschuler, who's here today, has initiated, we're calling it GBF Cares for lack of a better name right now, but there's already some volunteers signed up. Michael, you want to talk about it? Sure.
There's not a great deal to say about it. It's a great idea. We had it in the past. Now is a really good time to reinvigorate it, and I'm glad to facilitate that. All I'm doing is maintaining a spreadsheet, and I've got names of about 4 or 5 people who I think you sent out an email earlier that week advising people that if they wanted to contact me and be on the list of people who are available to provide help, I'm glad to facilitate maintaining that list, and also glad to hear from people who would like some help. And so if anybody's in either one of those places, feel free to contact me. You can refer to Jeff's email. I don't really know how to post to the Yahoo group thing. So maybe, Jeff, you might want to send that out again so that people can have the information. I'm glad to do that. It's totally a worthy thing to do. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
I don't know. Is Jerry Jones still here? Yes, there's Jerry. I just want to point out, give him a shout out. Jerry just had his knee replaced. And so people could reach out to him and call him or harass him or something. He needs it. Yeah.
Just a practical tip that some of you may have noticed in the beginning. I was holding up a little sign that said, "We are meditating." And the reason for that is I've been on a number of these Zoom meditation meetings this week. And as people, and it was happening here too, as people sign on, they are fussing with their sound system because they think it's not. So if there's some way for whoever the host to just have a little sign that says, "We are meditating now."
Good idea.
Because it relieves people from one person signed in and off about 4 times trying to make the sound system work, and it was working just fine.
Just to add a couple of points to that, the host can also mute or unmute everybody. And I haven't done that, but I know that's one of the things you can do. Also about Zoom, there's an extremely good support section, which has not just things like FAQs, but videos, and they also have live webinars, one of which I attended for an hour. It was very good, though I must say it was designed for millennials, and it certainly exercised my elderly brain, but it was good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm signed up for 2 tomorrow.
And just to add a bit further, so the basic Zoom app is free for including up to 50 people for up to 40 minutes. And if you want to get something more, it's not terribly expensive. It's $15 a month, which I have not done as yet.
So if we go to the Zoom website, they'll have this menu of various videos we can look at. Is that what you're saying, Lee?
Yes, go look for the main support page. They also have synchronous webinars, and that was what I was referring to that I went to that went on for an hour with somebody there doing it live for.
Oh, cool. That sounds important.
You can do it both ways. And they have a list, I understand, I haven't done it, of when the live ones will be on, and you can sign up for them.
Cool. Okay. Thank you for a wonderful talk, Steve. That was very helpful.
Yes.
Very much so. Announcements. I'll just say I'll start off with Donna. We still have our same overhead at GBF, the newsletter and our rant and things like that. Please go to our website afterwards to the bottom of the homepage or the donations page and click on PayPal, or you can send a check to our P.O. box, which I will post online. That would really be helpful. And next week's speaker is Reverend Leanne Schutt. She's a Dharma heir of Zenke Blanche Hartman out of the Suzuki Roshi tradition. She is born in Vietnam, but learned about Buddhism when she came to America and studied at Spirit Rock, and then spent a couple years, 3 years, living at Tassajara Monastery. And her strength as a teacher is in making Zen practice accessible to all. So that'll be next Sunday at 10:30. And speaking of Sundays, we are going to continue the Sunday program. Just look for the link on the front page of the website, and you can click right in. It'll have the hyperlink. And we're going to have a board meeting this afternoon. We'll talk more about adding meetings during the week. So, any other announcements? I know there's no real host, but James.
Yes, I've been to the beach around 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's utterly sublime. California has never been more beautiful, and it was very transformatively healthy to be near the ocean and to see dogs romping and to see people being sane and grateful.
Mm.
And living near the bay, the Embarcadero is quite nice also during the day, and walking out onto the piers. There's few people around. It's easy to avoid them. And so I found that helpful. The other thing I want to add, that in my own experience and that of several other people I have talked with, there's actually a positive to this also for our own experience of existence, that slowing down, not rushing places as much, not being in the traffic, connecting with people maybe that we haven't talked to in a long time, it's rather surprising, but there's also helpful aspects to it in my experience and that of several people I've talked with.
I just want to say, consistent with the opening poem, and on a positive note, despite all the horrible news that's been coming from Italy, I read yesterday that the porpoise have returned to Venice.
Yes.
And they're once again swimming in the canals, which
Yes. I don't know if everybody knows about the chat box or not. There's a button on your toolbar. Greece, you just put up the hyperlink to the PayPal button if you want to just go directly from the chat box. Honest.
I got a question which sounds like a silly question, but I hope it doesn't come across that way. The only way I can stay sane is take urban walks. And fortunately, I live close to Golden Gate Park, so I can walk there, and it's a lovely place to walk. But all right, I can't take walks outside of Golden Gate Park because after 20 or 30 minutes, I have to pee, and there's no restaurants or Starbucks or anywhere around open where you can go and do that. So I'm wondering how other people are dealing with that. I could just keep on walking in Golden Gate Park, but I would like to have other variety of walks too. But that's my,
I would suggest you find a tree or a bush.
Well, yeah. If I'm walking down in the North Beach neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out. I mean, there's not no easy solution, but as an elder, I have to pee more frequently than I have in the past, so they kind of limit my urban walks.
Richard?
Yeah. Okay, so I will post. There's a wonderful thing I discovered. They're pee bags, and you actually could pee into them. And if you're clever like me, I've learned to slide it down my pants and pee. I was standing alongside Notre Dame pissing away, and no one was the wiser. And it's got a gel pack in there that absorbs the urine, so it all congeals.
Where do you buy those?
You get them on. I got them on. I'll post the. I'm meaning to do this, but I didn't want to get a lot of silly responses. But actually, it's been a lifesaver because, unlike you, I pee 90 times a day, or maybe you do 90. But but you can kind of you're peeing, and even if someone says what's this guy futzing with his pants, your dick is not out, so no one should get hysterical. But I will post that. It's been a real lifesaver, and I've used them all over the place.
Please do post that.
Yeah.
Engage Buddhism.
Yes.
Okay.
Loving the Buddhist tips, yes.
Yes, right.
They can all be spiritually enlightened questions. Sometimes you just get down to the brass tacks.
Well, applied Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, Cass, would you do our
closing?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for that confirmation that this is the Grey Buddhist Fellowship there too.
Well, it is. Look at us all. We're all a bunch of old people.
No. I'm grateful. Okay, so the closing dedication of merit. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that live. Thank you very much. And thank you, Stephen, for a great talk.
Yes.
It really reset the context for me.
Blessings, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff, for making it all happen.
Yes. And thanks for
Thanks for coming.
Playing this up, whoever they are.
Yeah. Joe and Grisha, too.
Oh.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Be well.
Bye.
Thanks, Al.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.